Almost every country in the world is in debt. America's debt has slightly exceeded $38 trillion. The European Union owes around $14 trillion. Japan is close to $9 trillion. Even oil-rich countries are in debt, and even nations like Germany and China, which break export records, are deeply indebted. At this point, a simple yet unsettling question comes to mind. If everyone is this indebted, who actually owns this money? Today, the answer to that question helps us understand what money and absolute power truly are. And I have to say this situation is far stranger than we think. Debt is usually described as something bad, like a hump on our backs, almost like a cancer cell we must get rid of. But if we are being honest, the modern world stands on this debt. Wars, crises, pandemics, economic collapses, all of them are built on this global order, and I am asking you, watching from behind the screen, doesn't it seem that way to you? Here is the strange part. No matter how far you follow the chain of debt, the destination never changes. The world is not actually indebted to one person or to a single group of people. The world is indebted to itself. Of course, this does not mean everyone is equal. As of today, total global debt has surpassed roughly $320 trillion. According to some sources, it has reached $350 trillion. That is nearly 3 times the size of the entire global economy. So how did we become this indebted? To truly understand this, we need to go far beyond credit cards, beyond banks, beyond digital currencies, and even beyond our own time. The year is 1694. William III sits on the English throne. Europe is in the middle of a massive war. England stands on the front line of the 9 Years' War. Its enemy is France, ruled by King Louis XIV. As the war drags on, the state treasury begins to empty. No gold, no silver. Taxes are no longer enough. Feeding the army and keeping the navy afloat becomes impossible. King William III realizes that he cannot continue this war using traditional methods. For the first time in history, he looks for a solution, not in the palace, but in the merchant class. He presents the great merchants and bankers of London with an offer: lend money to the state today. In return, you will receive regular and guaranteed interest, paid from future tax revenues. To manage this agreement, to bind the debt into a permanent system, and to establish trust, the Bank of England is founded. This is no longer just a bank. This is the institutionalization of state debt. And it is precisely at this moment that history changes. Because from now on, wars will no longer be financed only with swords. They will be financed with credit, with interest, and with the taxes of the future. This is the foundation of the modern financial order. The state no longer spends only the money it already has. It begins to use money it has not yet earned, and what it gives in return is not something material. It is something far more powerful: the promise of the state. This promise is written down, and over time people begin to transfer this promise to one another. A piece of paper, with nothing on it but a promise. Yet that promise begins to circulate like money. This is exactly where government bonds emerge. This idea does not remain limited to England. France follows the same path. The Netherlands refines the system further. America, while gaining its independence and expanding across the continent, survives through this borrowing structure. Over time, perception begins to change. Debt is no longer seen as a weakness. On the contrary, the ability to borrow becomes a sign of trust, and power slowly shifts to those who can borrow the most. In the past, empires gained power by conquering land, by accumulating gold. Today, power is built not with weapons, but with debt. States issue bonds. and they collect interest in return. The struggle no longer takes place on maps. It takes place on numbers. The battlefield is no longer the front line. It is the balance sheet. When we look at the present, the picture is clear. Debt has become the world's largest economic product. Almost all countries are indebted. Banks distribute this debt. And everyone within the system becomes both a borrower and a lender at the same time. This is where the real question emerges. Who concretely owes money to whom? To understand this, we must look at the most central example, the United States of America. Because America's debt does not affect only its own economy, it affects the entire global system. Today, this debt has reached approximately $38 trillion. Roughly half of this debt is held by private and institutional investors. A large portion is held within the United States itself. Banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve. These institutions are the largest holders of government bonds. The portion held by foreign entities is around $9 trillion. The largest creditor is Japan. China follows behind. This is why the commonly heard phrase, "America is indebted to China," is not entirely wrong, but it is often exaggerated, because this amount represents only a limited portion of America's total debt. In reality, the vast majority of America's debt is owed to Americans themselves. This is how the system works. The government issues bonds. Funds purchase these bonds. The central bank occasionally buys them back. It injects new money into the market. Taxes are collected. Interest payments are made from those taxes. Interest income flows back into pension funds and financial institutions. The money never leaves the system. The money never leaves the system. It circulates within the same structure, over and over again. And this mechanism is not unique to America. The entire global economy operates this way today. Everyone holds someone else's paper. Everyone moves forward by trusting someone else's promise. This order resembles a table game. Everyone borrows chips from the person next to them. Everyone must stay in the game, and the game has one silent rule. No one gets up from the table. However, the real power in this game does not belong to countries. It belongs to markets. Massive investment funds, central banks, major investors. They decide who can borrow comfortably and who will be crushed under debt. When confidence in a country weakens, the consequences are immediate. The currency loses value, capital flees, governments fall, and the lives of millions of people change overnight. At the very center of this system are central banks. They do not merely manage debt. They do not merely manage debt. When necessary, they expand it. When necessary, they create it. Because in the modern world, money often does not emerge from printed paper. It emerges from written debt. When a central bank purchases a government bond, it creates new money in exchange. This means that every unit of money in circulation carries the trace of a debt written somewhere. That is why there's no such thing as debt-free money. And this entire order rests on a single foundation: trust. As long as investors believe that a government will pay its interest obligations, the system continues to function. The gears keep turning, money keeps flowing, but when that trust breaks, the consequences are immediate and severe. The scenes we witnessed in Greece, in Argentina, and in Sri Lanka begin to appear. Austerity measures are introduced. Unemployment rises. The crisis deepens. Public anger grows. So what happens next? The system does not collapse. It resets. They do not merely manage debt. When necessary, they expand it. When necessary, they create it. Because in the modern world, money often does not emerge from printed paper. It emerges from written debt. When a central bank purchases a government bond, it creates new money in exchange. This means that every unit of money in circulation carries the trace of a debt written somewhere. That is why there is no such thing as debt-free money. And this entire order rests on a single foundation: trust. As long as investors believe that a government will pay its interest obligations, the system continues to function. The gears keep turning, money keeps flowing, but when that trust breaks, the consequences are immediate and severe. The scenes we witnessed in Greece, in Argentina, and in Sri Lanka begin to appear. Austerity measures are introduced. Unemployment rises. The crisis deepens. Public anger grows. So what happens next? The system does not collapse. It resets. And at the point we have reached, the truth is this: there is no single culprit in this system. We are all inside it. We are all part of this structure. Debt no longer looks like a chain. It looks like a balancing mechanism. But if that balance breaks, that is when we remember what debt truly is: a promise, and a promise that cannot be kept forever.